Welcome to Mini Fights. I'm your host Brian, and today I'm playing Andy in a 20-threat game of riots spark over extremists, an alien ship crashes in downtown. Right at the beginning of the round, both of our visions have to choose which phasing they're using. They both use phased, which is the better one against energy attacks. My activation is first, and my Red Skull powers up using the Cosmic Cube. He then advances to the extremist console closest to me and uses Master of the Cube to teleport my Modoc forward up on top of the auto parts store. Andy's trickster god Loki does a double advance forward, just gets within range 1 of the rubble and searches for a Kree core. And he fails. My Ultron, despite probably having some sort of built-in metal detector, also searches the rubble and cannot find the Kree core. Back to Andy, his vision is also going to double advance up. And you guessed it, he's going to search for a Kree core. And you probably guessed that this happened too. Doesn't get it. My Modoc, due to his very clever positioning up on top of the auto parts store, rains down psionic blasts on Vision. Now Vision has just a flat 4 defense for psionic. It is not affected by his phasing rules, so it's not necessarily the best attack to hit him with, but it's such a strong attack with the built-in rerolls that I decided to go for it anyway. First attack deals 3, powering up my Modoc for 4 due to the Cabal bonus. And the second attack, I roll a whole bunch of blanks, but I reroll them all, spending 4 power, and end up doing 2 more hits, which is enough to daze Vision. Hela advances forward, smashes Shuri off the dump truck, whoops, and he gently places her back up there. That's his precious. And does a second advance to the center rubble. And I bet you know what's coming here. Yep, that's right. She does not find the Kree core. Back to me. Vision advances a second time. I decide, because he has fly, to land on the size 3 bugle, which I think in retrospect is a mistake. We'll see here shortly why. He tries to find the Kree core, doesn't find it. Shuri advances, Andy Shuri I should say, stands on the extremist console, and you can see she's got range to my Vision. She does Shuri things, deals a point of damage to him, more critically pushes him off of the extremist console that's under that rubble. My Shuri activates, walks forward, so I get a little redundancy, and I try to kind of wedge her between the Jersey barrier and Red Skull. She Panther gauntlets Hela. I don't believe I caused any damage here, but I do push Hela back. Just trying to CC her. She has like mostly short range attacks, and just trying to keep her away from my army as long as I possibly can. The Prince of Asgard advances forward again, stands on the rubble, and searches for the core. And despite being literally a god, can't find it. And that ends round 1 in a typical fashion to this sort of mission set. We both end up with 2 VPs because we both hold 2 consoles, and nobody's found the Kree core yet. Into round 2, where I will have priority. Both visions start the round with enhanced density. That's the one that gives them 5 dice physical for defense. I activate Modoc and Psionic Blast Thor. After various Modoc reroll shenanigans, I end up dealing 2 damage. I decide to do it again. And this time I have enough power to actually reroll, I believe, 4 dice. Ultimately, this ends up netting me to 4 total damage on Thor. Andy decides he doesn't want to leave his Thor on 1 HP remaining and uses the Odin's Blessing Tactics card. By using this is going to allow him to basically just take 1 damage, and which cuts down also the amount of power my MODOK gets, so pretty good all around. Thor bows to the will of MODOK. MODOK is spending 2 power to cause Thor to move. I move him directly away from all my stuff. Hela uses 3 power to patch up Thor, which is going to remove 3 damage from him. Vision activates and is proven as the most worthy of the Kree Corps. Picks up the Kree Corps and uses his Synthezoid Avenger physical attack on my Ultron. This ends up dealing 2 points of damage. He then uses Solar Energy Beam, which is going to hit Ultron first, dealing no damage, but generating a couple power due to sap and the normal power generation it does. Then hits MODOK and deals 1 damage to him as well. He ends his activation by picking up a chunk of Jersey Barrier and throwing it at Ultron, but Ultron entirely dodges it. My Cabal-affiliated Shuri checks her range to Thor and launches a barrage of pulses from her energy gauntlets. She ends up dealing a point of damage to him, generating a total of 3 power because of Cabal, and pushing him back. Her second action is to walk up and take cover behind this size 3 tank, which is going to block LOS from most of Andy's stuff to her. Thor barrels forward, flies up on top of the auto parts store to within range 2 of MODOK. So this is going to be 2 advances to get there. And Andy is going to end up using the advanced R&D card. This is going to push a power from Shuri to Hela and to Thor. So 2 spent from her, 1 goes to each of them. And that 1 additional power is going to allow Thor to do a throw on my MODOK, because he can use the strongest Avenger of all, throw a size 4 model into another model. So he wings him off of the building like a bowling ball on top of my Ultron. Now my Ultron gets pretty lucky here. Manages to dodge 2 of the 5 incoming damage. Takes 3, leaving him on 1 stamina remaining. Now that ends Thor's activation, so it's right back to me, and before I even activate a model, my MODOK, who is now close enough, is going to patch up my Ultron, spending a full 5 power to heal him for 5. Back to the other side of the table, my Vision advances forward onto the console and unleashes a solar energy beam to the Trickster God. After some thoughts, checking range to Shuri, some upgrade rerolls, I end up dealing 3 points of damage to him. Vision then uses Calculator Trajectory to throw this dumpster at Loki, but Andy decides to use the Brace for Impact card, spending a power off Loki to take no damage. Andy's Hela advances around the light tank, using 2 advance actions to get herself on the console. Back to me, my Red Skull is going to nudge over just a little bit to the left so we can get range to Thor up there on the auto parts building. He's going to end up dealing a total of 3 damage with a Cosmic Blast. I didn't really look at Andy's cards, which I should have before I did this. I could have sat power from him if he'd had power, which is kind of the idea in my head, but he didn't really have any on him. So I only end up getting 1 power total for causing damage because of the Cabal rule. Loki activates, demonstrates that he is a god, uses Frost Blast on my Vision. Now this is attacking Vision's weaker defense because he's in his hyperdense form right now. This ends up doing 3 damage to him and applying the slow condition. Loki yells something about being a god again, strikes my Vision, and deals no damage. Over to the left side of the table, my Ultron attacks Vision with Metallic Fury. It forces Andy to use Rapid Phasing to swap to the type of attack I chose, because you get to pick with that attack. I end up dealing 3 damage to him. Would have applied the bleed condition, but he's immune to bleed. I target him with it again, switching the type of attack, forcing Andy to use rapid phasing again to compensate. This time, however, the dice don't really do very well for me, and I end up dealing no damage to him. At this point, before I end my turn, which is, Ultron's activation, I decide to use Cosmic Invigoration. So both Red Skull and Shuri have to spend a couple of power, and then I make a small attack roll against Shuri, which does a point of damage to her. This, however, the power of the cube takes her activated token off of her, and is going to allow me one additional activation of this turn. Back to Andy, all he does with his Shuri is back her up against the dump truck, I think to try to resist getting pushed. My Cosmically Invigorated Shuri is going to advance to the right, get line of sight to Loki, who does not have enough power to trickster away, roll a whole bunch of successes. Doesn't really matter. I deal 1 point of damage to him. I do generate 3 power because of Cabal, and I rolled a skull. And this, of course, pushes him off the console, which means I'll end up securing it. And that's going to be the end of round 2. Andy is up in this round 4-2 because he owns 2 consoles to my 2, but he also has the Kree Core, which is worth 2 VPs. So he's going to race up to a 6-4 lead, and round 3 is about to begin. Despite my victory point deficit, I'm still feeling pretty comfortable here. It's not that huge of a difference, and Andy has used a lot of his tactics cards resources, and I have not. That may be critical later in the game. My vision phases. Andy's vision goes hyper dense. Andy's going to activate his Thor and strike my Ultron for 2 damage. He does not, however, trigger the throw that is built into the strike, thankfully. So he decides to just do a throw the old-fashioned way, using Strongest Avenger there is. He's throwing my MODOK, who is an enormous heavy bowling ball, into my Ultron. My Ultron can only dodge 1 of them, ends up taking 4 damage, and gets dazed. Then he strikes my MODOK. Not a super exciting roll. The wilds are not going to help, thanks to MODOK's built-in defenses. So MODOK takes 1 point of damage after some rerolls. MODOK Psionic Blast Vision, but ultimately can't cause any damage to his computerized brain. He does, however, sap some power from him. He then forces him to bow to his will, advancing him closer, and then hammers him with another Psionic Blast, this time melting his circuitry and killing him. In addition to Vision's silicon brain melting and running out of his ears, Andy's got a bigger problem. I've got the Kree Core now. MODOK picks it up. Andy's Loki advances onto the console, heals himself for a point of damage, declares that he's a god, and fires his Frost Beam. He's going to do it on Shuri first. The rolls are not that hot for him, only ends up doing a point of damage to her and applying the slow condition to her. He then resolves the attack on Vision. Same thing, deals a point of damage. He already has the slow condition, so no additional effects. So back to my activation. I'm going to use Field Dressing. MODOK is going to pay for it, so he's going to spend 4 to take the Daze condition and 1 damage off of Ultron. Since he hasn't activated yet, Ultron immediately activates and uses a ton of his stored power to Metallic Fury Hela. This deals huge damage and leaves her on 1 HP. He then chucks a Dodge Viper at her, which dazes her. His last thing he's going to do, he heals MODOK for 1 HP using the console, because MODOK is within range 2 of the console. Andy decides to pass as he's down 3 activations to 1. I activate my vision, throw a Coke machine at him, at Loki, I should say, dealing 1 point of damage, putting him on 1 remaining, and then I use my beam attack, which just does huge damage. I only needed to do 1, and that dazes Loki. I end Vision's activation by healing him for 1 HP off the console. Andy passes again, so my Red Skull pulls power from the cube, damaging himself for 1 in the process. He heals with the console, and then advances to the left, and ends his activation. Andy's Shuri vacates the point, double advancing to the left side of the table. I assume with the intent of using her upgrade aura on both Thor and Hela next turn. My Shuri takes a similar activation, walks forward slow because she has a slow condition, climbs up onto the tank, and ends her activation positioning for next round. And that's going to wrap up the round. I'm feeling a little bit better about this game now. I feel up a little bit attritionally, and I score out 4 BPs to Andy's 0 for this turn. So that's going to jump me up to 8, so it is now 8-6 to me going into round 4. Round 4 begins with my vision going into enhanced density. Andy activates his Hela, consumes all 3 of her captured soul tokens, and targets MODOK with Reign of Hell. After some Shuri upgrade rerolls and some MODOK rerolls, etc., we land with MODOK taking 6 damage and the bleed condition. Hela unleashes another Reign of Hell on MODOK, and this is enough to deal the 2 damage that he has remaining, dazing him, popping loose the Kree, which Hela immediately scoops up, and she will end her activation. My Ultron, who has 1 stamina remaining, has to activate pretty much. I don't have a choice here. So he Energy Blasts Hela, dealing 2, which picks him up 3 power. That leaves him enough power to unleash Metallic Fury on Hela, which unfortunately only deals 1 damage, leaving her on 1 HP. He then spends that 1 power to heal himself from the console. Immediately afterwards, Thor activates, strikes Ultron into oblivion, dazing him, and simply ends his activation as he does not want to leave the console. My Red Skull, sensing weakness in Hela, as she does not have enough captured soul tokens to regenerate and only has 2 stamina remaining, climbs up on top of the auto parts store and fires a cosmic blast at her, which unfortunately deals no damage. Back to the other side of the table, Vision and Loki continue their standoff. Loki declares that he's a god, and Frost blasts Vision, dealing 1. Still under the guise of being a god, takes a swing, using Strike this time against Vision, only dealing 2 damage, leaving Vision on 1 HP remaining. A lot of that happening in this game. Nerves are getting frazzled. Vision activates, starting on 1 HP of course. Solar Beams Loki for 2 damage. He now has enough power to unleash Synthezoid Avenger, which is his physical attack on Loki, who uses I Am a God in defense. Unfortunately, due to the crits being turned off and kind of just a poor dice roll on Andy's part, I deal the 4 damage to on the dot kill Loki. One unfortunate side effect of this kill is that Hela is now on 3 captured soul tokens again, and is much harder to get out of the game. And with his last activation of the round, Andy double walks his Shuri back to the console on his side in front of the truck. And my last activation is my Shuri, who Panther Gauntlets his, dealing a point of damage, generating 3 power, and pushing her off of the console. And even while affected by slow, she is just quick enough to hop off the tank and take the Extremis console for me. And that's going to end the round. Andy is going to score 3, 1 console in the Kree Corps to my 2 consoles. And now we're going into round 5. I feel like I've gotten a little lucky with some of the attritional swings here. For example, Loki not killing my Vision, and Vision killing him in return. The one thing I've got in my back pocket is I've got more models than Andy, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to ride that out. He's playing very well so far. The round by, of course, activating Thor, who throws Ultron into MODOK using the Strongest Avenger superpower. This ends up dealing 1 damage to Ultron and 2 damage to MODOK. He then strikes Ultron, dealing 1 point of damage, but he does hit the wild, which triggers the throw. The throw hurls Ultron into MODOK, and that is a 4 damage hit minus the dodges that MODOK rolls. MODOK rolls his dodge, whiffs them both, and dies. Thor attempts to finish off Ultron, who has 2 stamina remaining and does not have enough power to trigger Age of Ultron. Critically, he does not trigger the throw and only deals 1 damage, so Ultron survives on 1 HP again. So I have to activate Ultron, because he has to get a little bit of power so I can trigger Age of Ultron if he ends up getting hit again. He energy blasts Hela, dealing 1 point of damage, and he does it again. And he's going to deal no damage this time. So she's going to survive on 1 HP. Then I use the console to heal Ultron for 1. Andy passes, which means I can activate again. And my Shuri immediately walks forward at her slow speed, and Sonic crushes the opposing Shuri. This deals 4 damage, which ends up dazing her, and also applying stun and stagger conditions. Andy's Hela decides to get the hell out of Dodge. Get the Hela out of Dodge. And I think I misspoke earlier. She was actually, I believe, on 2 stamina remaining at the beginning of this activation. Healed herself on the console, so she now only has 1 damage on her. She makes this second advance. Can't quite get to the console there, I don't believe. But she does get close enough to use field dressing on Shuri. So that's going to wake Shuri up, undaze her, heal 1 HP on her, and that'll allow her to activate this round. The Master of the Cabal decides to double advance, hopping down off the auto parts store onto the objective. I kind of deliberate on his placement a little bit. I'm concerned about Shuri pushes, but they're pretty hard to stop, to be honest. The 90-degree band is pretty wide. So after a little thought, I end up putting him here, right there between those bases. I don't think ultimately any of that really mattered, but I did it. Andy's Shuri uses the team power for Asgard to clear stagger, advances onto the console, and fires her Panther gauntlets at my Shuri. This does the usual stuff. It deals a point of damage, generates a little power, and pushes her off of the console. Asgard Shuri then heals herself on the console for 1 by spending 1 power. My Vision vacates the point, climbing over the building, or flying over the building, I guess I should say, and advancing forward within range medium of Andy's Shuri. He then uses his throw to throw the size 3 tank at her. 4 damage is incoming. She has 2 remaining. And so Andy's going to need to roll a lot of dodges here. He has to roll 3 on 3 dice. He does not, and she is dazed. That wraps the round up, and the scoring situation is going to be 2 to Andy for the Kree Corps, 1 to me for this left side console. The reason I own that one is because there's a tie for healthy characters on it, and then I have an injured character, which is Ultron. So this game is going the distance. Going around 6, it's like it's a title fight here. This is unbelievable. What a game. Round 6 begins with Vision going into enhanced density to protect himself against physical attacks. Andy's Hela advances forward and uses a couple power and one of her captured soul tokens to hit Vision with her mystic attack. At this point it's 3-2, which would deal 2 damage to Vision, and he has been kind of progressively healing himself on the console on the right for most of the game, so he is back to having, I think, 3 HP remaining at this point. Andy rerolls a fistful of dice, ensure his upgrade ability, but critically misses all of them. So Vision is still standing. The good news for Andy is that she does get an immediate capture soul token back, so she can still recur. Vision activates and does a solar beam over both of them. I target Shuri first on the the thin chance that maybe I wipe her out and then the upgrade rerolls can't be applied to Hela, but it does no damage. However, he does pull a power from that attack. Now we resolve the attack on Hela. Dice roll is a little bit better. And this roll ends up being good enough that she doesn't really have any choice. That even with rerolls, she doesn't have much chance of living. So she uses Goddess of Death, burns all 3 of her captured soul tokens to essentially recur with full HP. That's going to be 4. Vision attacks again, hits Hela. Hela rerolls 1 dice. It is not enough, and it deals 3 damage to her. Andy miscalculates my remaining power, and I have 2 left, which allows me to throw Hela into Shuri. This is going to deal 3 damage to Shuri and kill Hela, shaking the Kree core loose. So just an amazing vision activation. Due to the position of the Kree core now, Andy has to go after it with Shuri, although I don't know if he had to do it yet. I think he probably felt the pressure too, because maybe his Shuri dies to mine. So he went and scooped it up, skedaddled over to the right side, and is pretty much out of threat range of anything that can do more than a damage to her. Red Skull feels the moment is here. He pulls power from the Cosmic Cube, damaging himself slightly, but unleashes it on Thor. He deals 5 damage to Thor, which is exactly how much stamina he has remaining, which dazes him. That's Andy's last model he can activate, and because of the table state, that'll allow me to hold 3 of the consoles, and Andy will only hold the Kree core, giving me a 3 to 2 points advantage at the end of the round, and since we were tied at the beginning of the round, handing me the victory. You can see here we're just kind of pointing at the table. I'm showing him kind of like what the moves look like. We measure it out. I think a little bit off film too. We use a proxy model just to make sure 100% that Ultron can get back by flying back over the top to the console on my side, which he definitely could. Yeah, I mean, hell of a game. Even editing it took forever. It was so long. We really, I don't even know what to say. And it was a really good one, man. I think, honestly, that last round or two, I had a couple really lucky swings in my favor. I'm not entirely sure I deserved to have as big of a model advantage at the end as I did. I don't really think that was the case. I just think Andy left a characters on 1 HP more than once, which is really difficult in this particular mission state. Just to give a little bit of like a post-mortem and why I think this is such an interesting mission, we basically sort of unintentionally chose the longest possible game you could ever construct. It's 20 threat, which is the most points you can play. There were, I believe, 4 or 5 total tactics cards that either heal or recur somebody, including Age of Ultron. Hela can just bring herself back to life, essentially, giving herself another 4 HP on her backside, the injured side of her card. The consoles heal, and they healed a lot, as they always do. In fact, probably too much, but that's another discussion for another day. And then Asgard can also heal every single time they activate, or they can clear a condition. So the amount of like healing was just bananas. Oh, and like Odin's Blessing, taking 5 damage off of a big hit that Thor took. Thor probably took 14 damage before he took 2 on his actual card. Before he got dazed, he probably took 15 to 20 damage. It was just ridiculous. He got patched up, he got Odin's Blessing, he got healed by the consoles, Hela got healed a bunch. Vision got healed a bunch. MODOK got healed a bunch. Ultron got healed a bunch. Like it's just really, it was almost like we went through the game and just picked all the things that could extend the game as long as we possibly could. And the fact that as much died as it did was pretty impressive. And I think a lot of it has to do with just sometimes the swinginess of a dice game, right? Because there were some big attacks that could actually get through and kill somebody, but it was not as common as you would like, I think. So it really just ended up being an endurance race. I think the game on the table ended up taking almost 2.5 hours. We were both pretty much like sweat on our brow at the end. It was ridiculous. It was a super long game of MCP. One of the best games I've ever played. I honestly think I lucked out a little bit. I don't know if I deserve that one. But here we are at the end. And Andy, always a super awesome sport, great opponent. He did a lot of stuff right. I can't really think back of too many items in the game that were like egregious mistakes. There was definitely just some things that was like, oh, I'm putting enough resources into X model, it should die now, and they didn't. And there were a few techs that were kind of the opposite, that just sort of randomly one-shot something that really swung the balance. And real quick before we wrap this up, I'd like to mention a few kind of friends of the show. You can see them down in the description below. But there's a couple awesome blogs, Xavier Protocols and Inspiring Monologue, that you should definitely check out. Gamers Guild, which is our buddy Nate. He does his own MCP channel, and he does a lot of like model reviews, battle reports, tactical talks, including one that I was on recently. Very cool channel. And last but not least, my buddy Ted, who runs the Etsy Printed Planets, and he makes those cool 3D printed boards that you can put your cards in and they kind of organize your tokens. And that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching Mini Fights. We've been growing in a really nice fashion. You guys have been liking and subscribing and sharing our videos, and just continue to do that. We really appreciate it. We love bringing you content every week. And on that note, we will see you next week with another video. Thank you.